Hello everybody, welcome back. Now we are going to cover the collapse of Tokugawa authority. I'm sorry, not Tokugawa authority, Ashikaga authority. Tokugawa collapse comes much later. Collapse of Ashikaga authority and the start of the Warring States period. And as I said in an earlier lecture, the Warring States period really overlaps with the very end of the Muromachi period. And in some ways, some historians start to talk about the Warring States period starting from 1467, from the very start of our narrative today. Whether or not exactly you want to put the start at that date or a little bit later, sometime in the 16th century, that's not necessarily as important to know as the fact that in this last period, starting from 1467, the authority of the Ashikaga shoguns really does start to be eroded in a very serious and thoroughgoing and systematic way. And the Warring States period basically is an outgrowth of that development. Really, the main problem for Ashikaga was the same main problem that all samurai faced, how to ensure loyalty from their retainers. There were laws. The Joei Code that was promulgated by the Kamakura Bakufu, which I'm sorry, not the Joei Code, the Jokyu Code, which governed relations between lord and vassal, kind of formalized them, and the evolution of vassalage under the Muromachi, the injection of a lot of cultural sophistication into the mix. All of that did structure samurai relations, but at the end of the day, these were still people who were looking out for number one. They were out for rewards. Sometimes these rewards came as a result of serving their masters, and sometimes these rewards came because the samurai took them in the process of basically stabbing their masters in the back. This was a constant danger. There were all sorts of ways in which lords tried to deal with this. The most successful is certainly to have a lord who is very charismatic, who has a very large persona, who can demand the basically the performance of feudal dues from his vassals. Someone like Yoshimitsu, someone who is also culturally sophisticated, somebody who sets up mechanisms to bind the samurai together, encouraging the residents of Shugo Daimyo in Kyoto, for example. That worked as long as the shogun was strong enough to make it so that he did not become a plaything of all of these lords in Kyoto, who he had invited there himself. And that's just one example of how charisma works. There were also marriage relations. Samurai were always marrying each other off. Marrying each other's daughters, marrying each other's sons, because that bound families and clans together. But really, these institutions were overall pretty weak. And samurai did have, increasingly throughout the Muromachi period, increasingly sophisticated ties with the countryside, as we've seen. Landowning in their own name, and the localization of much of samurai life. And there were some other very interesting ways in which lords tried to make their samurai listen to them. There were, for example, literally there were loyalty oaths signed in blood. This is one example. You get a basically a piece of sacred paper, regular paper will do in a pinch, from a temple, and it has holy symbols on it. This is the symbol of the war god, for example, these birds. So this, I'm sure this came from the temple of the war god, Hachiman. And you write out a loyalty oath on it, and you make your retainers sign it with imprints of their own blood in some cases. So here, this man Okayama dai something, is a retainer who is swearing loyalty to the Lord, to his Lord through this piece of paper. By the way, Japanese handwriting during this time period is very difficult to read. Given enough time in a dictionary, I can make sense of this, but basically this kind of writing gives historians fits. It's also an interesting puzzle. But in any case, these loyalty oaths were as effective as you would imagine they would be, which is to say, they were effective to the extent that it was in the interests of the vassals to obey their lords. If it was in their interests to betray their lords, oftentimes they did that instead.